is open, but up to you guys.
Ours is open.
Well, we are live.
Oh,
so
there we go.
Good to go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Take a Knee. As we were had a little bit of a scheduling snafu on my end, but no big deal. Today we have a special guest, so I'm going to allow Mike to do the introductions, and then we just want to hear some thoughts and insights of going through the Blue Water process and experiences of new careers after military transition and so forth, and just see what we kind of learn and share from mistakes and successes, and have that kind of a discussion today and see where things go. Probably hang out for 30-45 minutes as
what we do,
time allows. But cool, Mike, good seeing you.
Well, yeah, you too, Scott. It's always good to get caught up. I was had some fast hands in the cockpit there. I got to remember to shut my Outlook down so you don't have to listen to all the dinging emails showing up in my inbox. So Scott always reminds me of that, Roy. Like I'll leave something open, right? And all these programs have their unique bells and tones and buzzers and everything, right?
We're just happy you're using technology, Mike.
Yeah, we're on, right? So it's good. Oh, well, it's always good. And again, Roy, I think you track this, right? Scott and I, we try to keep a cadence up. We truly do try to do this weekly. And then we usually come together and we burn through 45 minutes pretty quick because, Scott goes over his prior week stuff. I go over our prior week stuff. And then we kind of take a look ahead and we just share, insights, additional keen insights that I hear from members who are out there wrestling with offers or, other stuff in the landscape. And we just kind of highlight that stuff real current, right? And we keep it out there. But in this case, right, we wanted to extend an offer for you to join us. So we're happy to have you. So for the audience out there and the listeners, right, Roy Decoster, Blue Water member, you went through Blue Water. I was just looking at it. I was going to pull it up again, but it was last year, right? It was
I think it might have been
March
prior. I mean, time flies.
Yeah, like it
22.
Yeah, it was 2022. I think you're right on that, right? And yeah, man, that does fly. And it's hard to believe that we're halfway through our fourth year here at Blue Water. This is crazy. Also, Roy, once you stepped out, I know you and I spent a lot of time together, in your career progression. You were considering a lot of stuff, but mostly got kind of focused in pretty quick on Two Circle. For the group out there, right? Two Circle, again, golf clap to those guys. They've been very supportive of Blue Water, right? We love having their support. And I know you're engaged with them now. And man, it just seems like a great fit, continues to be a great fit for you, right? And the company's really engaged in some meaningful work and just doing a lot of stuff. And I know the leadership there, Kevin Wolf and, Mouth McCall, just all the individuals that we engaged with early on as we were aligning this relationship, right? You guys really are focused on the veteran, right? It's not just, lip service, right? You guys embrace it, right? You bring quality to the warfighter, whether you're wearing the uniform, before, during, and after, not in transition, and here we are, right? So they're a great partner, and we're happy to align with them. So, but most recently, I would say, Roy, right? You were a guest of our lunch roundtable, right? And Boot Spaces last month. And that was a good time, right? Good discussion out there. And I think you and Abdul and Yank navigated that space pretty good, right? So you get three of you guys at the end of the table, and man, I just got to get out of the way because you guys are going to drive that show, and it's just going to be great discussion and just you guys make it happen. So, but again, Scott, it was a great event, and the lunch roundtables for the listeners out there. Right. The whole purpose of that is just to create this non-attribution environment for members like Roy, come to the table and just, hey, this is what I experienced. This is what I saw. This is what I thought was helpful. This is what I thought wasn't helpful, as they navigated,
actually, Mike,
into their own success. Right.
That's a good way for you kind of get Roy to tell the story a little bit. What came up during the roundtable, if you recall, and that you highlighted, rather than you just going into your whole background and everything. We know there's been success. So let's, talk about some of those highlights, what maybe mistakes you help people avoid, or you think people you wish you would have avoided, or, quicker wins than you expected, that, things like that.
And Roy, before I forget, make sure I come back to, because I want to share with everybody, Roy's a record holder. He clearly holds the record for receiving an offer the longest out from his start date of all the ones that we track, and he still is the record holder of this. So we'll come back to that. But
all right.
Roy, tell us, man, what do you remember about your transition? What worked well, right? What didn't? I mean,
well, to go back to the question about the lunch roundtable and the things that were good about that, and I think positive information I got to pass along to the rest of those guys. The two things that I think were very valuable to me was, one, the concept of, and I'm going to steal the title of a book that I mentioned called Designing Your Life.
Yeah.
And that book is in some formats a whole workshop done by the author. But the concept is that you get this rare opportunity to design your whole life.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, which many military retirees are. So what is it that you want to do? What do you want your day and your life to be filled with from the time your feet hit the carpet in the morning? So that, I think, is a great concept to try and internalize. It can be very scary. In a military career, you spend your whole career with somebody else telling you exactly what you're doing from the time your feet hit the carpet in the morning.
You probably, and when you went through your cohort, the first discussion of the day, if you reflect back on it, remember it was labeled strategy, right? Your strategy in this. And Scott, it's kind of funny because our members were, and for those of us who have started with Blue Water and follow this, right? Every 6 months, right? We'll go in and tweak the syllabus. We'll make changes. We'll update it. We're agile. We can do these kind of things. And so we mentioned strategy to this audience, and their eyeballs kind of roll back in their head. They're like, "Oh, Mike, we're going to talk strategy, right?" And so, what do you think our recent change was? The book that you brought up there, Roy, about 6 months ago, Dave Wadelick brought it to all of our attention on the instruction side. Steve Weeman, myself, Joe, we all looked at it. We said, "Hey, instead of strategy, let's talk about a purposeful design, designing your career progression," right? And it was framed right after the book that you referenced. And it really is powerful. Now, is that in essence a bit of strategy? I think we'd agree it is, but words mean things, and words get reactions from people. And the response that we've got from our membership on how we reference, designing your career progression, modeled after this book, Designing Your Life, was powerful. And it just seemed to mean more, even though you and I both know this is a strategy on what you want to go for. We're not going to call it strategy. We're going to say, hey, this is your design, right? So yeah, I appreciated you bringing that up. It was powerful and very timely for Steve and I. We go, yep, it just reinforced, right? It resonates. That message resonates with our members.
Yeah, I'm glad it did. I saw a lot of nodding heads and got some questions afterwards from guys. So that was great. And that was awesome, Scott. You just threw up the Amazon link, it looked like.
Did I get the right one?
Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah.
Cool. I think the other discussion that was good is a friend, an old colleague of mine, Brian Broadwater, asked about LinkedIn. And there are two answers to that, which I thought were great, given the setting we were in. One is that one of the great things about your course is that you do a primer on how to maximize LinkedIn. And there's some follow-on material about, hey, here's what to do and not do on your LinkedIn premium account to make that work for you, which was great for those of us that, nobody really, well, I don't want to say nobody. A lot of us, I think, we maybe have a presence on LinkedIn and other social media, but we're not really serious about it until it's important for us, right? Which is that approaching, transition. So it was that, and then the other message I thought, which not only for LinkedIn but for all the other formats, is it's all going to be new and scary and intimidating, and you're like, oh my God, this is going out to God and everybody. Oh, someone from Boeing looked at my profile, holy crap. But I just started not really like that movie, but just saying yes to things, right? Like I talked to some people selling financial advice and some other stuff, but when people reached out to connect, like, hey, would you like to get on a short call? Some of those were super informative, and I got to talk to people from all kinds of different industries, and a couple of those were headhunters, and they were pitching a different job, but they were like, oh yeah, well, I got your stuff, so I'll let some of my colleagues have it. And so I guess that, to sum all that up, I thought what was useful to me was just pressing the I believe button, saying yes to stuff, and just being fearless about getting out there and seeing what people are doing.
You got Cujo in the background. I love that, man. You got the watchdog. That's good. No, it is, Scott. These discussions, man.
We actually have a milkman. That's who that is.
Is it raw milk?
No, they're good discussions, Scott, and we got to bring you in for another one of these, Scott. It's been a while since you've kind of sat with us at a round table and just in that non-attribution environment, like Roy was kind of capturing.
Well, actually, that's a good point, Mike, because I was just bringing up something, because I was on a call yesterday, a mastermind group for veteran business owners I'm in, and the guy gave a presentation about, he was talking to business owners about, how to get your teams to work more efficiently. And a lot of that has to do with the tech stacks that people are falling into. And sure, we had, Outlook and SharePoint and stuff in the military, but, everything's contracted and streamlined and you're just forced into it. You got to learn PowerPoint, Excel, or whatever. But now out in the business world, like, there's so many different types of softwares. And, Roy hit on that. I think LinkedIn's kind of a testing ground just to get your feet wet with, a lot of stuff. I'll just share a slide here real quick. And
while you're bringing it up, Scott, and Roy, I know you know this now, right? Many of members, as they step into their career progression, right, we are social media averse, right? We just don't, for so many years, we didn't want to be a part of it. I don't want to worry about it.
Right.
And Scott, we really do try to make it easy for members. Like, you guys see Blue Water, we do post articles, we post informationals, we post awareness, and we try to make it easy for members to take that first step going, oh my gosh, Mike or somebody at Blue Water just posted this, I'm going to like it. Ooh, right? Or I'm going to make a comment going, thanks, Mike, or I'm going to forward this to somebody in my network. Those little incremental steps, I mean, they may seem simple to all three of us here, but for somebody, and I'll throw myself into this, where I was social media risk averse, I didn't want to touch it because I just didn't want the awareness. I just didn't want to deal with it. And now you have to step into this world. We hopefully are creating, a graceful ramp and an onboard platform for members to come in and to step into that world, right, comfortably. So
So Roy, I was curious if you had any other learning curves on this kind of tech stack space. The whole point of this slide is just to, show the different layers, when these things come up, of course, and we can equate it to military stuff, but anyways, that was top of mind, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit. So I wanted to see if you had any thoughts of, hey, once you landed the job, what was this like?
Man, for me, I am still struggling with the tech stack.
Okay.
And part of that was, and I don't mean I'm failing. It's just that it is complicated.
Interesting.
As I jumped into TwoCircle, it has its own stack of tools that they like. It's typically Microsoft Office heavy.
Yeah.
But that included a lot more use of Teams, which I got some of in my later years in the Navy, but
right.
it turned out that I had a company email account. Then I had a US only email account for some government information. Then you have a classified account. Then, all these things start multiplying across SharePoints and Teams. And there are times where during the day where I get a notification, on the side of the screen here, like makes those noises Mike was talking about. And it takes me 5 minutes to figure out
what it is,
what channel that came from. Or I'm like, I'm having this conversation with somebody. Where was that? And I have to poke around and find it. But so that experience has been an eye opener. I think if I owned a company, I would be very careful about selecting the appropriate environment. What do they call them now? Ecologies or whatever, ecosystems. That's the right word.
Digital ecosystems.
There you go.
Yeah, it could be.
I want my company to live in.
Are we at a point yet where hiring managers are attracted by people already aware of some of these tools? Because sure, Microsoft Outlook, Office and the traditional ones, but some of these anyways, there's thousands of stuff out there more popular than others. But it's not just the particular software, it's the types of tools. Like some of these new note-taking tools have become very interesting. And of course, AI, obviously, AI isn't exactly what people think it is. But actually, I heard this the other day. It's not artificial intelligence; it's augmented intelligence. And I was like, that's a better way to think about it. But
yeah, I guess that works.
Yeah, interesting. Well, cool. Thanks for kind of sharing some thoughts there, because obviously this is just going to be more important in the time. Do you guys have any more thoughts around the
tech stack? Right, we do talk to members about it, right? And we say, there will be some period of time, right? You remember, like when you step into career progression, right? You here's your last day of active duty until you land at your new success. We track that time at Blue Water, right? National averages, if guys are kind of looking at the clock, 5 to 5.5 months is not unrealistic for a time period like that. If you lean into it hard, start early. We are seeing members navigate this space in 3 to 3.5 months, and but you've got to get your design done. You have to start doing your market analysis, and then you've got to get your network built to support what it is you want to do. But during that time, we put out the members to the tech stack, discussion. We say, learn a new skill. And we often go to members, and Mike, they come to me and they go, well, Mike, what skill do I need to learn? I don't know. And I'm like, well, you're going to have a number of informationals. Here's a great question. You're going to be talking to Roy about going to 2Circle. And you go, hey, Roy, if you could back up 4 months before you got to 2Circle, what would you have spent time, technology wise or skill set? And Roy's going to go, oh man, I would have learned Tableau. Or dude, I would have spent some time on this CRM software and figured this out. Or, most of the information is available in today's day and age, right? You can go to YouTube, you can get all these tutorials on these systems, but it takes time, right, to feel comfortable. But here's the realization of what I tell members. I go, you can do it now on your timeline, or you're going to spend nights and weekends trying to figure it out when you get your JOB. So your choice, right? We tell, members to kind of lean into that a little bit. And that kind of, dovetailed onto your point there, Roy, right? You're always learning, and new systems are coming out and how to work this stuff. But yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, Roy, if you did go back 4 months before you landed the job, tech stack or otherwise, what do you wish you would have known to be working on? Or anything like that?
Well, the current job, if I'd have known the job I currently have, I'd have worked on Byzantine, classified document portion marking and foreign disclosure and some other stuff. But that's just a particular job I got. That has nothing to do with technology, really. Although version control has been a war. I've become sort of a Nazi. Well, not that bad. A stickler about exactly how we do version control, because that makes a huge difference when you're submitting something to go to a foreign country and you get like, one step old and you answer 57 questions from, a government civilian that does this for a living. And you're like, what? Oh, wait, this is the wrong thing. Like, skip all of that. I'm going to send you a different document. The current job I have does mostly just Microsoft Office stuff and some of the military computer systems. So that, although the constellation of them that we use is cobbled up and confusing, I would say.
What about outside of tech, like back to the kind of lifestyle design question, the big picture?
Oh, man,
I'm going to brag on you a little bit, Roy. I'm going to brag on you, man, because I remember the conversations that you and I had. We had coffee a number of times. Like you embraced this. I mean, you really did. You said, hey, this is an important time in life. You acknowledged it's going to feel a little uncomfortable, but you also acknowledged that there's a process in place. And I will tell you, you leaned into it. I remember it. I'm just going to say you embraced it. You just said, look, I'm going to spend some time. I'm going to design this plan. I'm going to do and my best assessment that I can on what is a good fit for me. I remember having those conversations. So you really leaned into it. You did a good job. And I like to
imagine I've been kind of crazy there for a while. There was a lot of panicky, like, I need to talk about some stuff.
Well, we did have some coffee, right? And as you got further down into it, you navigated it very well, right? I mean, and hopefully Blue Water and what we put together in the process and everything was of value to it. And you're still part of the Blue Water ecosystem now, right? I love having you. Yeah. A staunch supporter in the network, right? And that's right at the heart of what we're trying to build here, right? It's like the network and the expertise and the experience was available for you when you went through. Now you are available for the next individual who's going to be stepping in, and stepping into their career progression, right? And it just feeds upon itself, right?
Here's something you could talk about, Norm, and I like that we're bumping into these big questions, right? Because your job, one of the things I came to realize that your job can be just a job again. It doesn't have to be the overriding authority in your whole life. So those concepts that I was grappling with in some of those requests for coffee were because that causes a lot of psychological or intellectual kind of stress. So I know if I could sum up what you do, Mike, at Blue Water to one word, it would be networking, right? And I don't think you would disagree with me about that.
Yeah.
In the process of networking, not only with new people, but with your old friends that are out there, in addition to the, how do I get the job I want thing, there's all of these conversations that happen when you touch base with friends that are on the other side, where there's a lot of kind of amateur therapy that happens, like pontificatching is a word my friend made up, where you're just kind of sitting around and they're like, oh, I remember where you were at. And so in addition to the job network, just the network of your brothers and friends that you reconnect with, because they're on the other side and you don't see them every day.
Yeah.
But the process
for your mental wellness, right? It's a mental wellness thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some guys are like, oh man, do you, some guys are like, man, do you get the panic attack sometimes? Like that, some of that, like almost like PTSD like stuff you get from doing a hard job in the military afterwards. And
and I even found, in my own experience, right? You're surrounded by people who are going to look at you, going to say, hey, dude, it's going to be okay. You're going to land just fine. And I found that comment completely unhelpful in most instances, right? Even though people that you know and respect well, and they're saying, hey, you're going to be okay, that doesn't really help me. And I think back in my case, it's exactly what you alluded to, like it's the reps and sets in those conversations where over a period of time, right, you step into that environment and you go, okay, I can visualize myself doing this, right? I now, part of it's education, part of it's comfort factor, part of it is network, part of it is, a whole lot of different things, but it all comes together. And when you get to the point, you go, okay, I can visualize myself now making this next step, right? And that's important. And there are some people that want to go from A to Z in a day, and you're like, dude, it's a process, right? And don't skip these steps, because in career progression, I think you guys would agree with me on this, that if you go straight to networking and receive an offer letter, but you didn't assess a good fit, you didn't design your plan, you didn't do all these other things, you stand a pretty good chance of this not being what you need in your life. And there's a forcing factor here. You'll get thrust right back to the head of the line to start over, going, okay, what's important to me? What do I want to preserve in my life? What's my design look like? Is this really a good fit for me? Yes, it is, or no, it's not for these reasons. And now I want to target it and pursue it. Right? You know what I mean? Like if you skip all that, it's gonna boot you back out of the system eventually. Because the one thing I tell our members, Scott, all the time is, we can't promise, right, that the first thing that you grab a hold of is going to be the best fit for you. But make no mistake about it, that's our goal for you, right? I want that to be the goal.
Yeah.
It's okay if it doesn't work, but don't lose faith in the process and don't skip it. Because here's the thing, the pedigree of individual that we have in Blue Water, Oz, and you know this to be true. If you step into an environment you're not happy, you will not stay. You have that much, self-assurance that you're going, this is not right for me and I'm leaving, right? This is not fulfilling and this is not what I thought it was and I'm leaving. And you'll thrust yourself.
I hope so.
It takes a lot of time. Right. Yeah, exactly. So no, it's a good point. So thanks for sharing that. So
Roy, when you're talking about tapping back into your network, I know the obvious thing, especially when we're talking about the Blue Water network, it's retirees that have retired recently and, they're landing a career. And, I'm thinking, well, I didn't retire and my classmates are starting to retire. They have been the last couple of years. And so I'll hear from them a little bit. I'm wondering, how often are you reaching out to people you served with that got out at the 5-year mark or the 10-year mark and have already just been out there for a while? Are we remembering? Did I get that out? to tap into that network as well? Or is it, anyways, any thoughts on the kind of the past colleagues, well past non-retirees?
I would say colleagues. I've talked to some sort of in a glancing fashion, but part of the designing your life part for me is, I know at this stage of life, I've collected a small group of very good friends, my best friends. So I now got to build in a life where I had more time to spend with them and more freedom to travel if I wanted to. So that was a specific objective of mine. I've, based on the friend, I've been more or less successful because some of those guys are busy too. But I have a friend who is a systems developer for banks in North Carolina, and I've gotten to tag up with him. I have 2 friends of mine from my enlisted days as a journalist. I did a work trip to Tailhook, to represent 2 Circle at Tailhook, but was able to cut out an extra day to catch up with my friend who lives just over the border in California. So I would say personally quite a bit. Professionally, they are a network. If they came to me and said, hey, I need a guy to do this, or if one of my friends said, hey, I really want to get into photography. One of my former friends is a very, very successful photographer who also does some big veterans events. He was there to capture some of the D-Day memorial stuff.
Oh, wow.
On a paid trip from a veterans charity that he works for. So I do maintain that network somewhat, although I haven't used it for professional reasons very much lately, although it's still there.
Yeah, and I guess it could go both ways, because I think the other thing that that Mike brings to the table is, now with the Blue Water Network as the cohort, we've now got something to lead people to. So when I'm out there talking to business owners that aren't retirees, I'm telling them, hey, do you know there's this like pool of individuals out here, and they don't necessarily all want to work for Boeing. They'd work for other levels of businesses. And a lot of them are government contract in space or otherwise, private equity. Mike says people are interested in that kind of stuff. And they don't, they're not always thinking, they're not always going to veterans networking or hiring events per se. They got to kind of let somebody find them and let an opportunity show up. But if we know, hey, there's a group of high caliber individuals, that's another way to spread the Blue Water mission. But well, cool. Roy, hey, any other big thoughts or kind of lessons learned that you wanted to share or top of mind?
Somebody stepping into their career progression right now, Roy, what would you tell them?
A couple of very short pieces of advice I thought were great. One, if you're doing it right, it should be a part-time job. Like you should spend that much time on it, like 20 hours a week or whatever. Take it seriously, unless you're going to go be a surfer, post Navy or whatever.
I moved to Pensacola. Yeah.
Okay. And I mentioned this at the lunch roundtable too. I'm like, the best part of a network are those mentors, those people that you look up to, whose lives you admire. Like, find those guys, ask them questions, and then be coachable and do the work. It will all pay off in the end. Those were my show up, be coachable, do the work. Those are like the three mantras I've really started to internalize, and it started with my transition, and I just keep doing it.
Well, you certainly embraced all of that, right? And again, Scott, I think you see it with me, and for the members that may be listening out there, right? Roy, you've always been passionate about helping us pay it back, right, and pay it forward, and invest into the network, right, as we continue to grow and scale that. And so for all of that, we can't thank you enough. And I just look forward to continued relationship and watching you continue to thrive, right, with Two Circle. And if you get a chance to see Kevin Wolf in passing out there, always be sure to send our thanks to him and the whole Two Circle team, right, for their continued support. Really, without their support, Roy, we just can't do these cohorts. We can't continue this level of engagement, and it's that important, right? As we continue to reach out, to help, the number of individuals in trail that are following in our footsteps, right? And we all work for teams and led teams. We don't have to transition alone. Nobody likes doing anything alone, right? And they don't have to, right? You can come right here to us, with us, and like-minded professionals who were all in uniform doing all of that great stuff together. And now we're building a program where it's those same individuals coming together, helping these individuals navigate to their next success through their career progression. So we're excited to have you guys a part of that. And so thanks for the support. And thank you to you personally for your continued support. So, and Scott, we're getting this live online onto this thing every week. Somehow it's a miracle. It happens, right? It's technology, right? It's the tech stack. You navigate it and you get us out there. So that's awesome.
No, the idea here is just to share success stories. Obviously, there's always going to be lessons learned. Nobody's going to do it. There's no set path for everybody just to do it this way every time. So you got to glean, from this, that. So anytime somebody can come on and share an experience, you never know, what might be useful to one other individual out there. And then this also is a networking opportunity, to let people know, like, hey, whether you're looking at Two Circle, or something that Roy said resonated with you and his experience going through it. I think the idea here is we all want to be approachable, to reach out, to be helpful one way or the other, because that's the other aspect of using LinkedIn and the technology. It does make it quicker and easier and less barriers to entry. And so everybody kind of understands the world we're in. You want to get face to face eventually, but in the meantime, ask a question. Send a chat. Don't be afraid. And whether it's us or other people out there, I think that's a big lesson. Yeah, that's part of being coachable, right? You just gotta get out there and do the digital stuff.
Yeah, even when it's scary, do what
you got to lean into it.
You never know.
Hey, real quick, Oz, you mentioned Tailhook. Are you going out to Tailhook this year?
I don't know. I went out last year, so they've asked for interest levels. I'd certainly love to go out there every year, but we try to spread the good deals around, I think. So,
okay.
Are you going to AUSA?
What is AUSA?
Apparently, AUSA, Association of the United States Army. That's the huge conference with all the defense contractors in DC. Mike, it's the same week, and I think it's intentionally the day before the entrepreneurship conference that you and I are looking at.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So maybe we go up a day early and
go to
USA.
A day early and just kind of wander through it. Yeah.
But actually, Rory, I mean, tell me your experience of you mentioned the Tailhook, going to conferences. You've seen it on the other end. Did you go to any conferences from the networking side of things as well? I mean, maybe you got some of that as well from this experience. I'm just always curious, hey, when can conferences come into this conversation of, military transition, retirement, that I don't know that people are always looking at those.
Like Corporate Gray or any of that? Did you do?
There's different types.
Yeah, I did Tailhook, and I went to Sea Air Space a couple of. That was kind of when I was just really thinking about retiring, but I saw a couple of approaches. I think it's sort of pretty canned. Like even when I go to Tailhook, I see a lot of guys I know when they're wearing, a polo shirt with a logo on it. It kind of, it's not my favorite environment, although it's a great place to, and I'm going to use my finger quotes here. Where's the camera? Like run into people, right?
Yeah.
Like if there's a company that you are targeting that does what you want to do, and you have people, it's a great way to find those conversations and touch base with people.
We've found that also. Right? I think our first year or 2 years going to Tailhook, we tried to have structured discussions, right? A learning venue, a breakout room, etc. I learned pretty quickly, and I've shared this with Scott, right? That environment is not conducive to people wanting to have this kind of formalized instruction about, designing their career progression out there. But what we did find is Steve Weeman went with me last year. I was out there just walking around and being approachable. People want to have a one-on-one conversation. Hey, Mike, what are you seeing? Hey, I'm getting ready to step into terminal leave. What would you recommend? Right? Dude, I can have one-on-one conversations out there, with way more context than I could if I tried to get everybody into a breakout room, right? People just don't want to be that overt about it, but they absolutely do want to have these one-on-one conversations. And so we'll be out there in force, just walking, getting our 10,000 steps in a day, right? Walking around out there and having a lot of these conversations and just, talking to businesses and talking to other members like, hey, happy to share our insights and what can we do to help. So
it sort of feels like dropping a resume into a big company. That's what conferences feel like to me. Like the odds are low, but if it's 1 in a million and you take 1 million shots,
You're saying
unless you're doing like I'm saying, like we were just talking about, like I know this company is going to be there. I want to go make some connections. That's probably the useful part, I think.
Yeah, I was just at a different type of, I guess it was more of a summit. Those types of things. It was through IVMF. It was a day-long thing. It was geared towards veteran entrepreneurship, and that was a different environment. But I ran into a guy who we had already been connected on LinkedIn. We didn't realize it till we went to connect on LinkedIn. We're like, oh, we're already connected. But he had retired, done the corporate thing, was looking for a new gig, and showed up there. It was interested in entrepreneurship, but was just showing up to see we could meet. And I think he was telling me he met, the Amazon was a sponsor, a particular part of Amazon. I think the sales store people. And so he was chatting them up, and they're reps as well. And so, but that's a much more, it was an environment where it's not just booth after booth. There was very personal relationships. So sometimes kind of going outside the box of the traditional job fair or conference. Anytime you're just in a room of like-minded people to meet people, everybody knows somebody. You just kind of tell them where you're at, and they're going to be like, oh, you should probably meet this guy or that guy. And it's, different than going to a booth. So,
never pass up an opportunity to meet somebody new and add them to your network, right? That's what I would just encourage people to do.
Yeah, right? And sometimes you spend the whole day working the floor and handing out business cards and all that stuff. I don't really enjoy that, but then you're like tired. And you're like, fuck it, I'm going to go get a beer. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
And the best conversation of the day happened with the other tired dude next to you who's also having a beer because he's tired.
That's
and
it.
Then that's the one you exchange your business cards and actually talk to later. And you're like, hey, remember when we were at that thing? And
you just never know. You just never know. Yeah.
No, cool. Well, awesome, guys. Well,
I told you, Roy, we'd burn through 35, 40 minutes that quick, just talking about all kinds of, good things and hopefully relevant highlights and call outs, right, to those individuals getting ready to step into their own career progression. So
yeah, it's great stuff, man. Anything I could do to help somebody in that situation would be great. It's not a great tragedy. It's a great opportunity. I didn't mean to express it that way, but so intimidating. Certainly was for me. Important, and there's so much to win. But yeah,
we're doing it right.
Get after it. The brass ring's out there.
Yeah, no, that's okay to acknowledge it. Sometimes it's like, hey, things can be tough again, and very personal without knowing where to go. For the obvious help or SOP. There isn't just an obvious thing to press or. Well, cool. Well, any announcements or things you want to promote, or I don't know if you got any particular charities or something you might be involved with or whatever.
Well, since you're giving me the opportunity to throw a plug in, I'll say that the service aspect of life was something that I felt I was going to lose when I left the military. So I looked for that, and I ended up joining the American Red Cross as a volunteer. I went out, last night and did a couple hours of that. So as part of the designing your life part, like you can build these parts into your life.
Yeah.
And if volunteerism is something that you're after, a friend of mine, another military guy, works on a volunteer rescue squad. He's picked up, EMT as a completely side gig, another two-circle guy.
All right.
That's awesome.
So that's huge. That's a good plug, man. There's lots of great work to do out there that doesn't have this is a personal thing I'm doing for my own benefit. Mm-hmm. There are service opportunities. I mean, you mentioned IVMF, and there's all of the service related stuff. There are great ways to add, the value of service and sacrifice to your life, which you talk about something that's valuable when your feet hit the carpet in the morning. You're like, oh, well, I went out and helped. For instance, last night, a Navy corpsman had a fire in his kitchen, and I went out and got him in touch with all the American Red Cross resources to make sure he and his family, found another apartment and kind of made it through the recovery in a healthy way, which is huge. Feels great.
Wow.
Okay. That's awesome. That's awesome, right?
Very cool.
Great.
Yep.
But that's a great call out, right? For members looking to find that, and I'll use the term ready room environment, but you know what I'm talking about, right? What's going to fill you internally, and it may not be just one bucket that you step into. Fulfillment may come from you now plugging into several buckets, right? And that's awesome. Love to hear that. Well, congratulations on that. That sounds great.
No, thanks. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, huge.
And obviously, I would say if you're just starting this and you don't know what the heck, if you don't know anything from anything, then call Norm, Mike Wallace, and sign up for a Blue Water seminar. Start listening to Scott's videos on what you're going to do with your money. And then at least get you halfway down the road on the two big
get you
my money. So.
On a good vector anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. You won't go wrong by starting there, I don't think.
Trying to make it easy.
You guys
are awesome.
Great work,
well, thanks for hosting us, Scott.
You bet, man. Anything you want to share, Mike, coming up?
No, I think we talked about it. We'll be Tailhook in August, right? Cool. We come right back from Tailhook. We're headed up to the Naval Academy Alumni Association, right, for our September event that we'll be instructing in the Flugel Center up there. So really excited to align with those guys. And in fact, if members are thinking about, stepping into, if you can believe it, we are completely full all the way out through 30 October. That's the first seat that we have available. And I will tell you, even all of our end of year cohorts, they're filling quickly. Both October, December are over half full right now. So the seats are going quickly. And it really does, you guys, it breaks my heart. People come up to me the month prior and they go, hey, I thought I was going to be able to get into one. I need to get into one now. Do you have any open seats? And I'm like, man, I tell people, don't wait. Register. You have to register early. We are a very high touch, small group environment. Roy knows, Scott knows. And, we only do 10, 11 seats, maybe, right? In these are not 50 people in an auditorium kind of thing. We've got to be able to make that connection with you. I've got to understand what it is you're pursuing to help you navigate that space. Steve Weeman, I know Joe, Dave Wadlick, all the guys that instruct with us, John Malfitano as well. That small environment, high touch, that's what makes this special, right? As we slowly and methodically grow the network over time. And again, just planting the seed, end of first quarter next year. So March 2025, we've made a commitment to try to do our first Seattle Blue Water cohort, right? So we're talking with Perry Yaw, who's at Boeing and soon to be from Boeing. Jim Webb out there with Boeing. We've got some supporters on the Blue Water team out there. Matt Arney is local in Seattle there. James Stewart with Microsoft now, he's out there. So we've got that cadre that's going to come together and help us get a footprint out in Seattle. So we're looking for corporate sponsorship to help us overcome that. We've got conference rooms. We've got pretty much everything else laying flat. We just need a little bit of revenue to help us head that direction and secure that trip.
Two-Circle's got a big presence in Whidbey, but I'm sure they're already contributing to the effort.
Whidbey, we draw from those guys, right? Even local Seattle there, people relocating, and then the Joint Base, right, just south of Seattle there, is a huge draw too. So we've been inundated. People are asking us to come. It's not like we just want to go there. People are asking us to come, and we want to give them that option, right? But so we're going to try that. Anyway, enough said. That's kind of what's on our plate.
Awesome. Well, good stuff. I've got just my new presentation coming out called A War Chest Strategy for a Wartime Economy. And that's just going through the realities of the world we're in from a financial perspective, geopolitical perspective, and then, kind of what to do about it from a military retirees perspective. And that is all for today. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Scott.
Good
Thanks
stuff.
for having me on.
Thanks, guys.
You bet.